Welcome back. Today we have a word, some Russian czars, another blizzard, a song, and a quote. So grab your favorite cuppa, sit back, and let's check it out. Hi there, and welcome to This Day in History for March 13th. March 13th is the 72nd day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, 73rd in leap years, with 293 days remaining to the end of the year. Today's word is serf, and that is S-E-R-F rather than S-U-R-F. Serf is a noun that means, as the dictionary says, a person of a servile feudal class bound to the land and subject to the will of its owner. So what does that mean? Serfs were not free people, but where slaves could be bought, sold, or traded individually, serfs belonged to the land. If someone bought the land, the serfs came with the land. They belonged to the land. You had the manor, which was the big house, the lord of the manor, who was the absolute boss of that property and everything that lived and happened there. Serfs might occupy a plot of land where they could live under the protection of the lord of the manor, and in exchange, they worked for the lord of the manor, whether it was farming, animal husbandry, mining, forestry. Whatever work there was to do on the land was done by that land's serfs. Serfs were bound to the land, could not leave, and could only marry with the lord's permission. The word serf has followed the typical pattern of coming through French, Old French before that, Latin before that, a word that meant servant. The feudal system in which serfs existed is much older than the known use of the word serf, as the first known use of the word serf is in 1611. Serf. And with that, the Russian Tsar Alexander II's rule began in 1855. Seems like he was a decent fellow, a good ruler. For example, he emancipated the Russian serfs, reorganized the judicial system, calling for election of local judges, abolished public beatings as a form of punishment, was fairly pacifist, only engaging in a brief war with the Ottoman Empire. Tsar Nicholas II supported the Union during the American War between the states, commonly called the Civil War. I already said he emancipated the Russian serfs, and he ended some of the privileges of the nobility. Assassination attempts had been made on his life in 1866, 1879, and 1880, presumably because even though he was making some really remarkable changes, there were some radical factions who felt that he hadn't done enough or he hadn't done it fast enough. Eventually, the radicals were successful, and Tsar Alexander II was assassinated on March 13th, 1881. Now, if you've been paying attention, you might remember hearing something about Russian unrest in the episode for March 8th, but that happened about 36 years after this event and involves Alexander II's grandson, Nicholas II. On March 13th, 1942, the Quartermaster Corps, QMC, of the United States Army began training dogs for the newly established War Dog Program, or Canine Corps. Started out with a bunch of different kinds of dogs, but eventually kind of changed, and they tuned it in to just a few breeds, including primarily German Shepherds and Doberman Pinschers. Other dogs that are good in these tough roles include Dutch Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and Labrador Retrievers. All of those breeds of dogs have different temperaments and skill sets, so some breeds will be more effective in certain jobs than others. On March 13th, 1993, a winter storm known as the 1993 Storm of the Century, or the 93 Superstorm, or the Great Blizzard of 1993, affected the eastern United States, dropping feet of snow in many areas. That was well before I ever went to New York, but I was acquainted with people there who were certainly feeling the effects. Trucks couldn't get in with groceries, for example. Parts of Tennessee got 56 inches of snow. That's a little over 4 feet, 140 centimeters. Georgia got 35 inches, 89 centimeters of snow in that blizzard, and 13 inches in Alabama, 33 centimeters. They got 6 inches of snow in Florida, 16 centimeters, and we're talking about places that usually don't get snow at all. And here they got this upstate New York lake effect amounts of snow, along with record cold temperatures in this storm. Now, that was on March 13th of 1993, and I don't know how the weather is where you are right now today, but here in Fort Worth, we're anticipating a high of 83 degrees. That's 28 Celsius today. Today's song is 8 Days a Week by the Beatles. Credited to the Lennon-McCartney writing team, the idea for this song was inspired by a turn of phrase in a simple conversation. Paul was going out to John's place in Weybridge and asked the chauffeur, "How have you been?" And the chauffeur replied, "Oh, working hard, 8 days a week." This quote is also sometimes credited to Ringo Starr, as he is noted for making the occasional malapropism. Wherever it came from, the phrase 8 days a week went from an idea to a delightful little love song by the Beatles and reached the #1 spot on the Billboard Hot 100 on March 13th, 1965, where it held for 2 weeks. 8 Days a Week by the Beatles. Link in the description. Okay. How about that? Today we have a quote by American philosopher and psychologist William James, who said, "Act as if what you do makes a difference. It does." William James. Alrighty, y'all stay safe, be good to each other, and I'll see you next time. And I think that's going to do it for us today. Thank you so much for watching. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video with a link in your email, messaging, or social media. If you enjoy this series, you can check out the playlist that contains these videos. I'll put a link to that in the description. That playlist lives on YouTube, so for other platforms, I'll include a link to my blog page. It's called No Really. You can also find me on Rumble, BitChute, and Odyssey. All those links in that description. Alrighty, that's all I can think of right now. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.